Welcome to Spiritual Insurgency. I'm Jason Lupo, sitting here with my co-host Aaron Lujan,
Howdy.
and our special guest for the day, CEO of True North Restoration, uh, Dan Peak. Dan, how you
Hello.
doing?
Hello. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
So today we're going to talk about Ice Ice Baby.
Vanilla Ice. We're not talking about early 90s rap. We're talking about information, customs, and enforcement. So we want to discuss this because I think the church is in an interesting position with immigration because there's this issue I think that's been weaponized against the church. A lot of critics, or I should say proponents of open borders, like to weaponize scripture and say you Christians are hypocrites because if you look at your holy book, it says to welcome the foreigner and to love people. And here you are with your, Trump ICE agents going around, scaring the brown people. There's this narrative that's erupting where I think the church needs to step in and be a voice of reason and be a voice of truth because this issue is dividing our country and division is not going to serve the kingdom of God. And I also think that there's just a lot of misunderstanding around this issue. So, what is the issue? The issue is that this week, and I think really the last 2 weeks, we've seen a lot of viral videos coming onto the scene of ICE agents in various communities. The one I'm thinking of right now is in San Diego, where there was this huge ICE raid conducted in the middle of the day at an Italian restaurant in San Diego. And you had anti or counter protesters trying to disrupt the ICE operation, and they had to deploy flashbang grenades, and it turned into a giant chaotic scene. And it's just furthering this debate in this country of, are we approaching immigration reform properly? There's a lot of people in immigrant communities that are fearful. There's a lot of people on the pro-Trump side, if you want to call it that are applauding this and are really for this, and this is what we voted for type rhetoric. So I want to have this conversation with Dan because Dan's in a unique position where he actually works with this community, employs the community, and he's got an interesting perspective. Jason and I were talking about this on the other show, and Jason and I butted heads a little bit on how we viewed this. My position is really simple. If you, I agree with everything that Trump is saying in terms of closing the borders. I'm for deportation. I believe fundamentally that if you've entered this country illegally, if you've broken the law, the proper response is deportation. The proper response is civil, peaceful, and humane deportation. And I don't think that's what's happening. I think what's happening is we're having these giant chaotic shows where you have ICE agents showing up and instilling fear in these communities. So I'm gonna slow down a little bit and let Dan kind of chime in and amidst that verbal salad.
Mm.
What are your thoughts? Kind of just looking at this issue, 30,000 feet, Dan. What comes to mind?
Well, I've been in construction since I was 16. I did a construction tech course in the Midwest. That's where I'm originally from. And so throughout all these years, I've watched a lot of things change, especially when you go from region to region. I do work all over the United States, from East Coast to West Coast, and everywhere in between. And I work with a lot of the Latino population, like firsthand. And I get to hear their stories. I get to hear about how their dad worked for a company, was unable to obtain citizenship because while he was at work, his finger got cut off. And you can't get physical medical help here. He had to go back to Mexico because that's the only place where he could afford it because they didn't offer any kind of workman's comp. They didn't send him to the hospital. And so he goes back down and he gets his finger reattached and he had to put it on ice. And it is very dramatic. Well, in the chaos of that, he didn't have his visa. So it just, because it's such an inundated system, where if you don't cross every T and dot every I, you do risk stranding your family where they're here in America and you're down there in Mexico. And people say, well, why don't you follow the rules? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I mean, you could say that to a lot of different people, but, and I see the point of like, you do have to have law and order. Like if you don't have law and order, then chaos will ensue. But I'm also seeing this other side where, I mean, one of the guys that I work with when I did foundations, we're in a nice new neighborhood. We see the nice new playground. I'd take my family to that playground on Saturday or Sunday on day off. Hey, I got this really cool playground. Let's go there. And let's have fun with the kids. And I don't get any looks. Even though I'm driving the same type of vehicle. I'm driving a used vehicle. I make what you make. You make what I make. Because I'm a white guy, people don't harass me. They don't harass my kids.
Yeah, I think I'm in a unique perspective to address that because if you're listening on the radio, for our radio listeners, I'm actually brown.
Oh,
Yes.
you need to talk about that because that's actually super fascinating. Your lineage, you're more American than I am.
Right, and we could get into that, but I think for the purpose of this conversation, yes, I'm brown. If I don't open up my mouth, maybe I would look exactly like the gentleman that you're referring to.
Yeah.
My wife is from Mexico. She's also brown. She speaks Spanish. She purposefully she's bilingual. She's fluent in English, but she exclusively speaks Spanish to our children because we've made a family decision that our children are going to be native speakers in both languages because I'm a native English speaker and I do speak Spanish as a second language. My wife is a native Spanish speaker, speaks English as a second language. We're going to make this work because we think it gives our children a really unique opportunity. So we're in public where my wife, I should say, is only speaking Spanish to our children. We all look Latino. We go places. I don't feel stares. I don't feel judged. Maybe because I'm oblivious, maybe because I don't have victimhood mentality, perhaps. And I'm not implying that this gentleman has victimhood mentality, but what I am implying is that maybe it's a perception issue. Because I would argue that I'm in a similar dynamic as this man, being a Latino, being viewed public as potentially an immigrant, right? Because I'm Hispanic looking and my children are communicating in Spanish with their mom. Why is it that when I live in Colorado Springs, I lived in Banning Lewis Ranch for 4.5 years. You know, I work and move in the Briargate area that's predominantly Anglo. I don't know, maybe am I just kind of dumb and oblivious, or what's going on that I don't feel that way, but this guy does. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And well, I don't really know, but a lot of them, when I talk to them, when I get them in the truck and it's just me and them and nobody else is listening and nobody else is around, they're very frustrated because they don't feel like they would be accepted. And I don't know if you've ever been in high school,
I showed up every now and then. It was for the grills.
but in high school, there's different classes. You know, humans always are tribal at heart. We've been tribal for thousands of years. It's ingrained in us to go, oh, if you look like me and you sound like me and you act like me, then I'll accept you. And if you don't, because you don't have the awesome Nikes and I do. Oh, I sit at this table and you sit over there with those people. And oh, I like this and you like that. And
You live in Pueblo, I live in Briargate.
right. And if you've ever been on the outside of the quote unquote popular group, when you go sit down at that table, you feel out of place.
Sure.
Now, nobody else knows that you're out of place other than you. And so that definitely could be a proponent there where you're like, I just don't feel like these are my people.
Mhm.
And that innate, these aren't my people feeling could make you feel uncomfortable. And then, that could be a part of the issue right there.
Well, you said I don't know, and I think you answered my question. So these young men, these men that are immigrants that are working in these types of jobs where they're being targeted by ICE, I think are being fed a narrative, especially by the Spanish language corporate media, that there's an ICE agent hiding behind every bush ready to arrest you and send you back home.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a culture of fear that's swept over the immigrant community in this country, and it's been used to divide our country even further. And this is why I wanted to have this conversation, and this is what I'm warning against, because I think well-meaning conservatives and Trump supporters that understandably and legitimately have concerns about immigration, and they're well-meaning and they're actually true in my opinion, because I agree with them politically. I think this is being approached the wrong way. I think that the way that it's being approached is setting this country up for further division, and this is not going to allow this country to heal. I think that there's more practical ways to address immigration reform, and I'm so happy, Dan, that you're on the show, because as an owner of a company that traditionally employs the immigrant community, I want to ask you this question. Could immigration, let's create a scenario where a contractor is employing illegals, people that are not documented, came to this country illegally. They're contacted by some agency connected with immigration reform, those that enforce the I-9 laws. Contact you as the CEO and say, we have you under investigation. We are enforcing immigration law. We're doing this by cutting it at the root, by not allowing American corporations to employ immigrants. Because last time I checked, it's illegal for an American corporation to employ an illegal immigrant. Either you get rid of them or you get fined. Like, enforce the laws that are on the books. So my question to you, Dan, is, are there laws on the books that would pressure employers to get rid of illegals that were in employment?
Well, you're not supposed to be employing anyone that is illegal in the first place.
And if they are, and they're called that they're under investigation, would that create change?
Oh yeah, I'm already watching it happen within the industry.
Is this happening on a regular and we're just not seeing it because they're not viral video worthy?
Oh yeah, there's when everything went down up in Denver, um, right after Trump got elected, there were entire construction sites that came to a halt. Like no one was on the site.
Okay.
And so I'm not involved in big giant conglomerate stuff. I got, 3 people on staff. And so all of my guys are my employees. I've always had 100% legal workers for me, but I'm small. How do you do these big jobs and hit the margins that you need to hit with cost increasing, with all these different things? How do you do that? I don't know. I've never really gotten.
Unless you just hire illegals, isn't that the solution?
Well, what typically people do is it's a sub of a sub of a sub of a sub of a sub. So you got so many different layers of subs that people would have to go through each layer and boil down who's doing what and who's on the site and who's this and who's that. And so in the industry, I think you're seeing people not show up to work because they are afraid. And is the reform needed where we really just enforce the laws that we already have? Yeah. And is that going to cause disruption on people's jobs? Yeah. Like, just think about any time any system changes. If you had a currency that you were using and then tomorrow everyone said, no, we're not using that currency tomorrow. We're using this currency. It would cause so much disruption in a negative way because it's change, hyper quickly. There would be people who would show up with $1 and they'd go, no, we don't take dollars anymore. Now it's crypto. Well, I have a whole bank full of dollars. You would need to create a system that would take that into account, and you'd go, hey guys, we've been paying with dollars. Now we're going to go to this new system. Here's this exchange that we've created. And don't worry, all the thing that you have been doing this whole time is going to be accounted for, and it's not going to create chaos. Chaos is when you have disorganization. And so a lot of the fear mongering, a lot of these like buses, we're going to get them. Oh, like people really getting riled up. We're going to get American jobs back. You're just like, well, if you want American jobs back, do you have an American worker to take those jobs? And if you don't, did you factor that in?
If the American worker is paid a fair wage, will Americans do those jobs?
I think you need to have American worker in a fair wage.
Because the criticism, no, sorry to interrupt you, but I want to add this, because the criticism is always, well, if we don't allow immigrants in these jobs, then no one's going to work these jobs and the country's going to fail. There's this narrative that illegals are the backbone of this country. I disagree with that, but that's what the narrative is. And so critics are saying that if these jobs aren't filled by immigrants, no one's going to fill those jobs. Do you buy that narrative?
Yes and no, as I honestly have contemplated it. In the immediate response, I don't see enough American workers primed up with the skills to pay the bills. So I could go out and I could hire someone and I could pay him $40 an hour, right? Hey, it's you, and you're an American worker. I'm gonna pay you $40 an hour. Okay. I need you to like physically carry this task out. Oh, I don't really have any, actually, like it takes years to develop the skills to pay the bills. They say 10,000 hours. So if you don't have someone with 10,000 hours of experience, I don't care what you pay them, they won't know how to do it. Let's say that you have a critical illness and you need someone who actually can save your life. Are you just going to go to some doctor because they went through school and they just got out yesterday? Or are you going to go, no, actually, I want the specialist who's done this type of procedure multiple times over?
Sure.
When your life is on the line, you're going to be selective.
Yeah.
And so to make blanket statements in any type of industry or any type of actual problem that we're facing, you have to look at it like really subjectively and be like, okay, if I tell you you're not coming into work tomorrow, well, then who does come in? And are they going to create more problems than solutions?
So, generally speaking, has the construction industry just found the immigrant labor pool to be more reliable?
I think greed was what was fueling it originally. And I think greed is what fuels a lot of American economics, unfortunately.
Well said.
We go, ooh, I can get someone to do it for cheaper. Ooh, I can get someone to do it for cheaper. Ooh, I can get someone to do it for cheaper. You'll experience that even in a local market where I'll go out and I'll do a bid for, mold remediation. And, my bid's 2,000, let's say, I'm just making one up. The American homeowner is going to go, ooh, I can find someone who can do it for cheaper.
So, in other words, our open border policy has fed the greed of the American capitalist?
I think the greed has fed the greed. So to be an American capitalist isn't greedy in and of itself.
Correct.
Capitalism is simply whoever wants to show up and produce and give the best product to market wins.
Uncontrolled, untempered American capitalism, perhaps? Or American capitalism gone off the rails? I don't know what you want to describe it or call it, but what I'm trying to say is I'm seeing a connection between there's this inclination of greedy business owners who are capitalizing on a broken immigration system, is what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And so you would agree with that?
And anytime you ever make any game, there's always someone that's going to analyze the rules of that game and try to figure out how can I cheat and win.
And I think that's why we have this consensus with the Uniparty. Republicans and Democrats have lock and step, never ever provided at the federal level any serious immigration reform. We're in 2025. I was 17 in the 1990s when Clinton was campaigning on immigration reform. I'm now 44 and I'm living under Trump campaigning and supposedly doing things about immigration reform. Nothing has ever gotten done because Democrats get votes, Republicans get cheap labor. It's the Uniparty agreement.
Yeah.
And so we, the people, need to step in. We, the church, need to step in and have a reasonable conversation. And I think we're so fortunate to have Dan Peek on because he loves Jesus. He works very closely with the immigrant community. And I haven't asked him this, but I think it'd be fair to say you're a law and order, kind of sound immigration policy guy, right?
Oh, yeah.
So now that we have Dan on the show, I think the question I want to ask is, what should the church's proper response be? Do we deport these people? What do we do with like, do you agree with the ICE roundups is my question.
I don't know if I have an opinion on it. And I don't know if I want to have an opinion on it because I don't think I understand it.
That's fair.
And if you don't understand something and you give your opinion on it, it's kind of like, well, are you even informed? What I am seeing is I'm seeing fear. I had one of my guys that is 100% legal with the United States get pulled over in my nice truck. And this was what he told me, so I don't know if it was true or not. But I believed him. And they said, hey, we're doing checks. And he said, okay. And documentation. Okay, you're free to go. And so that was his experience. It was like, I don't know, 8 weeks ago or 10 weeks ago, something like that.
And did he mention what the cause of pulling over was? Is it with driving because he had a headlight out? Was there?
Nope.
This was just potential. Could it be possible or reasonable this was a racial profiling thing?
It seemed like it.
Right.
But I weren't there and I don't know.
Because he didn't cite that, oh, my headlight was
That was
all right.
a brand new truck.
Okay. I probably look like him. Okay, my heritage in this country predates Georgetown. And I'm not saying that as a flex. I know that sounds like that. I love America. But the irony is that if I look like that guy and my heritage predates Georgetown in this country, are we approaching immigration reform in a reasonable way? I don't think so. Racial profiling to me doesn't sound like the way to go. And I'd love to hear Jason's take on this.
I think you're suggesting that what's presently going on is some sort of like Giuliani stop and frisk
Yes.
mentality, and I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing that most of these ICE raids are calculated raids in calculated places for calculated reasons that oftentimes have been planned or scoped out for the course of months prior to them raiding establishments. I mean, that's what's making the news is these big raids. If somebody is pulled over for a traffic stop, they're gonna be checked. I mean, every time I get pulled over, which is plenty of times, um, don't hate. I promise I'm a safe driver.
I think there's an anti-ginger sentiment in Colorado Springs.
But I don't believe I'm being pulled over because my red beard. Um, but they check to make sure you don't have any outstanding warrants.
Sure.
They check to make sure that your vehicle is registered to who you say it's registered to, that it's not stolen. There's a checks that take place. Sometimes you're sitting there waiting for 10 minutes while they check and make sure you don't have any warrants, and it's time consuming. But, to throw in now that we're checking ICE and making sure that the person that we pulled over is not an illegal immigrant, I think that it's part of the holding up the law of the land.
But in this situation where he had his employee get pulled over with no obvious cause, legally speaking.
No obvious cause that was reported to Dan. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I mean, did you ask him why he got pulled over?
Yeah, he said it was a checkpoint. They had set up a checkpoint. It was at the beginning of all of the mass deportation where they were showing people on
Where
cross.
was he?
It was in Colorado Springs, is what he said. So
A checkpoint in Colorado Springs. I haven't heard of anything going on. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I haven't heard of a immigration checkpoint on the roads in Colorado Springs, nor do I know as though that's a legal cause of stopping somebody.
right, and so there could be more of the story. I don't really know, but yeah, the whole point behind some of these questions is there their side of the story that says this doesn't feel fair, and I would say yeah, but that's the way every culture from the beginning of humanity has ever been. Anytime you do a massive swing of power, there is going to be ripples.
Growing pains, perhaps?
Yeah.
So I'm not seeing anything reported in terms of news. What is legal for ICE or Customs and Border Protection to do is set up a checkpoint within 100 miles of the border, but they can't extend outside of that 100 miles. So it would not have taken place here in Colorado Springs if it was Customs and Border Patrol. Also, there's nothing reported that Colorado Springs was doing immigration checks in Colorado Springs by just stopping people. So I'm assuming he got pulled over for some reason, speeding or ran a stop sign or whatever. I mean, I don't believe that there's a Giuliani stop and frisk situation going on to try to deport illegals. I mean, they're targeting the ones that are known criminals. They're targeting the ones that are known gang members as part of the Venezuelan gang, as part of the cartel that's bringing in fentanyl into this country. They're not really targeting everyday citizens,
For argument,
everyday illegal immigrants.
for argument's sake, Jason, let's say you're right, and let's say there is no stop and frisk Giuliani-style policy taking place, but would you admit that there is a spirit of fear in the immigrant community right now that is setting us up for division?
I will concede the fact that there's probably an element of fear that's taking place, and I don't believe that fear is driven by policy. I think that fear is driven by media, and the media is the issue in this situation, not a Trump policy, not an immigration policy, not policy set up by state, local, federal government. That this is media blowing it out of proportion in order to have clickbait, number one, but number two, rise this level of anger and unjust. I mean, it's like they thrive on George Floyd riots. and they've always picked the wrong martyr. The left has always picked the wrong martyr. I mean, they're picking guys that are known criminals, child molesters, uh, drug addicts, drug traffickers, and they get shot by police, and all of a sudden, that's the new martyr for their cause. I mean, it's never some everyday person that they get shot accidentally in a gang war. That should be their martyr. That should be the martyr in the streets of Chicago, the guy that gets shot that has nothing to do with the gang war that's going on, that loses his life for no good reason. That should be the martyr.
Yeah, the hardworking dad who was Ubering in the middle of the night who got shot by the criminal.
So I have an analogy for you guys. And the analogy is a medical one. Let's say someone really dear and near to your heart had a medical disorder. I like cancer because everyone can, relate. It's just
We have an epidemic.
You like cancer as a as an
example.
as an example.
Not as a diagnosis.
I don't like cancer.
Yeah, no, we hate cancer. For the record, ladies and gentlemen, we all hate
We
cancer.
hate cancer.
And our sponsors do as well.
Yes. But in cancer, they actually poison your body. They're like, oh, how do you get rid of this cancer? Well, we're going to poison your body with chemotherapy. It's going to destroy every cell in your body on some level. But don't worry, you'll outlive it. That's a
Sometimes,
procedure.
but majority of the time, the chemotherapy will kill you faster than the cancer will.
But that's the thought process behind why they
Correct.
even do the chemotherapy. And so the analogy of that procedure of there's a problem here in your body. We need to come up with a solution. The solution is we're going to poison everything in the hopes that we can save you. And so when we have a type of illness in our political arena, we're going to have to do something major that's going to upset everyone. Everyone's going to get upset. And so if that was a loved one that you had where they did go through that procedure, you're going to bring them flowers, though, aren't you? You're going to bring them a meal. You're going to sit down. You're going to pray with them. You're going to say, oh, man, that's so terrible. I'm so sorry they had to go through all that. You're going to do things. You're going to have the realization that something hard needs to be done, but you're going to show up with the empathy for what went down. And that's the part that I would like to see out of the Christian community, is that we don't say like, oh, we can't be doing this. We can't be shipping everybody out. Well, it's a problem. It's a problem in our society. We have to correct it. But when we correct it, can we also show up and make sure that dignity is being thought of, even when people are wrong? I mean, the truth of the gospel and what makes it so powerful is that we say, yeah, you're a sinner. You deserve death, eternal death, the lake of fire. But guess what? Even in spite of all of your wrong and everything that's terrible, it's no longer I who live, but Christ that lives in me. And the life I now live, I live in faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. And then he challenges us to say, could you do that for everyone else? Yeah, but they're breaking the law and they're awful and they're mean. Yes. And we do need to have a response to it. And it is going to be very uncomfortable. And it is going to be very awful. But it already was awful. We're finally just looking at the problem and we're actually going to do something about it. But when we do, can we go out of our way to say, you know what, let's as churches, when we see that a family had its breadwinner taken out of the country, can we as the church go around that community, that family that got left behind and say, we're going to support you. Don't worry. Like we're here for you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And something, Jason, that you brought up a moment ago that I want to bring back up. So the root of this problem is, I'm going to call out the Spanish language corporate media in this country and in Mexico. So I travel to Mexico very regularly, and I get to sit in my mother-in-law's living room, and they will have the Mexican newscast on, and it is absolute weaponized propaganda on how, Trump is the great Satan, and they're stoking division, and there's this us versus them narrative that's continually getting pumped into the minds of the immigrant community. Specifically, Obama was responsible for running ads in Central America promoting our social services program to groups of people targeted at a molecular level from a data standpoint, those who were most predispositioned to not work, to not be producers. So I just want to remind the church that there is an evil agenda, taking place. This is a complicated issue, but a lot to the credit of Jason's argument, a lot of this problem is rooted in the weaponized corporate media in the Spanish language side. They're raging war, and the American English speaking public, I think, is oblivious to this because they're not tuned into Spanish language corporate media in Mexico. And so I want to lay a lot of blame at their feet as well. I think,
For
Jason,
sure.
would you agree?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The blame is the political agenda for the last several decades
Yeah.
to pull America down. America's the land of the free and the home of the brave. And if we have a Bible that when you read it in Revelation says, "Hey, we're going to eventually go to a one world system."
Mm-hmm.
And then you can kind of see like, well, but if America exists as a strong independent country, how are we going to have a one world system? Oh, I know. How about we just make them slowly um, lose their power? And you do that by everything that's been going on for the last several decades.
Yeah. It's actually called the Cloward and Piven strategy, I believe is what it's called. The Cloward Piven strategy, a weaponized blueprint for collapse. It's the deliberate tactic to overwhelm and collapse systems, the welfare, the election, the borders, to force radical socialist transformation, named after Marxist sociologists Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven. So you want to overload the system until it breaks. So the strategy, and this is designed by Marxists, is to open up the borders to overwhelm the welfare rolls so that budgets collapse, municipalities collapse. You encourage mass illegal immigration to strain cities and demand open borders, and then you sabotage election integrity through mail-in ballots and no voter ID policies. I'm going to stop there because in the end of the equation, the immigrant is the pawn in this situation. Yes, you have aggravated criminals. Yes, you have evil people in the midst of it, but I would argue that that's a minuscule of the population. The majority of the people that are being shipped in by the corporate overlords are people that are doing the same thing you and I would be doing if we were put in the situation they were. So let's remember, we don't hate the immigrant just like we don't hate the sinner. We love the sinner, we hate the sin. We love the immigrant, we hate their sin. So, like, to your point, it's going to be ugly the way we deal with it. We're in war. There's a lot at play, but we got to keep in mind our personal response is to scripture, which is to love others, but then also to expose evil. And I think the evil's coming from the corporate oligarchs that are just pumping all kinds of weaponized propaganda and creating all kinds of fear.
But it's as dismal as it sounds. If we care more about the kingdom of heaven than we do about the kingdom of the United States of America, even though we benefit from a good, strong kingdom. But Christ, I mean, he was literally healing the Romans. The Romans were the worst political adversary the Jews had ever faced. They came up with the crucifixion. They were like, hey, how can we torture people in a way that's so horrible? Nobody would ever want it. They were devising ways of being absolutely ruthless and evil. And yet we see Christ go, hey, your daughter's sick? She's healed. I don't even have to. And he's like, you don't even have to go to my house, man. Don't worry, she's healed.
At this hour.
And he was saying, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. And he was trying to make this point of there's always going to be political tension, no matter where you live, no matter what time in history you live. But my kingdom never will pass away, and my kingdom's here and now. The reign of my kingdom is in your heart. That's all I care about. So when you see things that are in chaos and they're awful and they're horrible, can you just show up with my kingdom in your heart? Because it's not going to affect you.
That's good. I think you're refocusing our priorities. I think a lot, and allow this to be a moment of correction for the church. I think there's a lot of brothers and sisters in the church right now that have exchanged their devotion for the kingdom of heaven and for the king, who's Jesus, for the kingdom of earth, which is the United States and King Trump. I think that a lot of people have been deceived into a form of idolatry. It's okay to agree with a political candidate, especially if it reflects biblical values, but it's not to be on the throne room. It's not to be the idol. It's not to be the fixation. It's not, our cause is not the United States. Our cause is the kingdom of heaven. I think is that what you're saying, Dan?
Yeah. Because we're eternal creature. If you do believe that you were created by God, you do believe in a creator God, and you do believe that he made you forever, and he did put you on earth. What is earth? Earth is the most extreme test of the human soul. Of you have the ability to choose good, or you have the ability to choose evil. What are you going to decide? Let's do it here while you can be saved. Yeah. Like God, it as much as suffering and pain is awful, and no one wants to experience it. It actually is the grace of God that he allows you to make a decision, and it's not an eternal decision while you're on this planet, because you can go, oh, wait, I was wrong. I'm sorry. And you get to say you're wrong. You get a redo.
In other words, we've given a lifetime of second chances.
You are. But there's consequences. So I'm not saying there ain't consequences. I mean, if I do something evil, I'm going to have to suffer the consequences.
I mean, he made it very clear, take up your cross and follow me. And if you suffer for doing good, glory to God, but you're still going to suffer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Suffering is still going to be a part of the equation. Just don't do it for bad reasons.
Right.
It's basically the only encouragement we got from Jesus. Mr. Lupo.
All right, we're going to take a brief time out. When we come back, we're going to talk about the one big, beautiful bill. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.